The rain outside her Nashville home softly taps against the window as Nicole Kidman sits alone, deep in her thoughts. A half-read script lies on the table beside her, untouched for weeks. After months of staying quiet since her split from Keith Urban, she finally decides to speak out. Not to defend herself or throw shade, but to share the silent truth she's been carrying inside all this time. For years, the world has seen her smile. Perfect, polished, untouchable. But tonight, that smile slips away, revealing something raw and real. In her calm, steady voice, she admits what almost nobody says out loud. Sometimes silence isn't distance, it's healing. It's the kind of confession that won't blow up headlines, but it sure makes people stop and feel something. Because behind every red carpet pose and flawless performance is a woman learning how to breathe again. If you've ever believed love and strength can still exist after heartbreak, stick around till the end. Because what Nicole reveals next will completely change the way you see her story. Subscribe for more true stories behind Hollywood's quietest confessions. Behind every smile, the woman Hollywood thought it knew. Under the soft glare of flashing cameras, Nicole Kidman always looked untouchable. Whether she was gliding across the Oscar stage or posing on a deep crimson carpet in a gown that caught every single flash, she carried herself with calm grace. Her poise looked effortless, her laugh felt genuine, and her career seemed flawless. To the world, she was Hollywood royalty, the living proof that success could look easy. But behind the cameras and all the noise, her life was anything but peaceful. Every glamorous moment hid endless work, exhaustion, and nonstop pressure to stay perfect all the damn time. In interviews, Nicole has admitted that fame can be beautiful and brutal at the same time. Behind every performance was a woman constantly rebuilding herself, balancing the demands of an international career while desperately trying to protect her peace and privacy. Audiences saw the highlights, the awards, the interviews, the effortless charm, but they never saw the grind behind every frame. Early mornings on set, sleepless nights memorizing scripts, non-stop flights across continents between movie shoots and family life. Success never handed her balance. It demanded sacrifice. Even while smiling for photographers, her thoughts often drifted somewhere else, to her children, her next role, or maybe just a simple wish for one quiet moment. Hollywood loves selling the illusion of perfection. Every headline and magazine cover polished that image even more, until Nicole became more than just an actress. She became a symbol. Elegance without struggle. Discipline without burnout. But perfection is heavy armor, and after years of wearing it, even she started feeling crushed by the weight. She once admitted that public attention can feel like living inside a glass box. You can see everyone, but sometimes you can't hear yourself. Friends and coworkers have described her as fiercely professional, yet quietly vulnerable. A performer who pours emotion into every role with precision, then disappears afterward to find peace. That contrast shaped her entire career. The fearless artist and the private woman, both trying to survive side by side. When she accepted her Academy Award for The Hours, her voice shook with gratitude, but her eyes hinted at something deeper. A woman who understood triumph and fragility at the exact same time. Off-screen, Nicole often focused on philanthropy and advocacy, using her platform to support causes involving children and women's rights. These weren't PR stunts or publicity moves. They came from genuine empathy. Still, fame never really chills out, and she learned early on that privacy had to be protected at all costs. While others fed gossip magazines with drama, she chose silence, a choice many mistook for distance, but really, it was survival. That quiet restraint became part of her mystery. Fans admired her for never oversharing, for keeping her dignity intact even when rumors exploded everywhere online. Yet beneath that calm strength was a deeply human struggle, the need to be understood beyond the headlines. In private moments, friends say she could be warm, funny, and shockingly honest. One minute laughing freely, the next lost in deep reflection. The world praised her resilience, but rarely stopped to ask what it actually cost her. For Nicole, every award carried memories of sacrifice, heartbreak, and starting over. The camera captured confidence. Her heart carried the scars and lessons. Fame didn't erase uncertainty, it amplified it. She learned that applause fades fast, but inner peace can take years to build. That's the version of Nicole Hollywood rarely showed people. The woman behind a smile. The one who, after the lights faded, wiped off her makeup, tied back her hair, and finally exhaled. The woman who still questioned things, still hoped, still searched for meaning beyond the spotlight. Her story reminds us that even the most polished images can hide exhaustion and longing. And now, as Nicole slowly opens up about her journey, the pain, the healing, the quiet rediscovery, she reveals something way more powerful than fame: authenticity. Because behind the world's perfect smile was never perfection at all, just a person trying every single day to feel whole again. The day the fairy tale began. It was a warm Los Angeles evening in 2005, the kind filled with golden light and the feeling that anything could happen. Nicole Kidman attended a charity gala, one of those fancy Hollywood events where elegance was expected and realness was kind of rare. By then, she was already one of the most respected actresses in the world, a woman who had experienced fame's highest highs and its darkest, lonely moments. She smiled for photos, greeted people politely, played the part everyone expected, but inside, she felt what she later called quiet exhaustion. The non-stop performances, the endless attention, it had all started feeling empty. Then suddenly, across the crowded room, she noticed someone who didn't seem fake at all. A tall, soft-spoken man with messy blonde hair and the unmistakable warmth of a country musician. Keith Urban was charming without trying too hard, confident without acting cocky. He wasn't surrounded by cameras or handlers. He just stood there casually, holding a drink and laughing at something his friend had said. Their eyes locked for only a second, but it was enough for curiosity to spark into something electric. They talked briefly that night, and somehow the conversation felt easy, natural, completely unguarded. He spoke about Nashville, songwriting, and the struggle of chasing dreams far from home. She talked about growing up in Australia, raising her daughters, and how fame can feel isolating even when the whole world knows your name. For two people constantly watched by millions, it was wild how easily they actually saw each other. Later, Nicole would remember that moment during interviews, softly saying, "When he smiled, I felt seen." It wasn't about celebrity status or smooth charm. It was recognition. Two souls exhausted from performing for the world, both craving something genuine and real. Their first meeting wasn't explosive or dramatic. It wasn't some movie-style fireworks moment. It was quiet, honest, a soft spark instead of chaos. But somehow, that made it hit even harder. Nicole went home that night, smiling without even realizing it. Keith later admitted he couldn't stop thinking about her either. But he hesitated. In his mind, she was completely out of his league, a huge Hollywood icon who'd never seriously noticed a small-town guy from Queensland. So he waited, for whole months, actually, before finally working up the courage to call her. And when he finally did, that first phone conversation lasted for hours. They talked about everything: family, childhood memories, music, faith, fears, dreams. By the time the call ended, something had shifted between them. For the first time in years, Nicole felt genuinely at ease. No scripts, no pressure, no pretending. Just two people discovering the rare comfort of truly being understood. Their first real date happened in Nashville instead of Los Angeles. Keith invited her to his hometown, far away from Hollywood chaos. They drove through quiet back roads, ate at small local diners, and stayed up talking beneath the soft buzz of porch lights late into the night. For a woman who had spent years trapped under the spotlight, it felt like rediscovering life's simple little moments again. He would later tell Oprah that he fell for her the moment I heard her laugh. And that laugh, the same one the world had heard in interviews, was different in person, freer, less guarded. Keith didn't treat her like a movie star. He treated her like a person. And that made all the difference. In the months that followed, their relationship blossomed quickly. Nicole once described it as like finding home in a person. They attended events together, though always keeping things quiet and dignified. Their connection wasn't built on spectacle or publicity. It was rooted in shared vulnerability. Both had known heartbreak, both had rebuilt themselves, and both were ready to find peace rather than excitement. Keith introduced Nicole to his family in Australia, where she was greeted not as a celebrity, but as Nick. Her parents, still living humbly in Sydney, saw in him what she did, a man with integrity and warmth. He played guitar for them in the living room, singing softly while Nicole listened, eyes full of the same affection she once reserved for her craft. When he proposed, it wasn't with flashing cameras or extravagant gestures. It was simple, heartfelt. She said yes immediately, with tears in her eyes. To her, it wasn't a fairy tale, it was redemption. A chance to build something grounded after years of living under clouds of speculation and loneliness. In 2006, they married in Sydney, surrounded by family, close friends, and the quiet hum of candlelight. The ceremony was intimate and deeply emotional. Nicole walked down the aisle in lace, her face glowing with something that looked less like excitement and more like peace. Keith waited for her at the altar, visibly moved. When they exchanged vows, he whispered something that only she could hear, words that made her smile through her tears. To the public, their wedding was a glamorous event. To them, it was a sanctuary. They weren't trying to prove anything to the world. They were trying to start over. Nicole later said that meeting Keith made her believe love could be safe again. After years of heartbreak and rebuilding, she finally allowed herself to trust, to feel, to hope. Their honeymoon wasn't filled with paparazzi or press releases. They spent it quietly, traveling through the countryside, walking barefoot on beaches, cooking simple meals together. For once, Nicole didn't need to perform, and Keith didn't need to impress. They simply existed, two people grateful to have found something real in a world built on illusion. Looking back, Nicole has often described that period as the calm after the storm. Keith became her anchor, and she became his light. Their love wasn't born from spectacle. It was born from stillness, from two hearts that had been through chaos and finally found a place to rest. In interviews, Keith would later call her his greatest gift. Nicole, in turn, referred to him as the best thing that ever happened to me. Their story wasn't perfect. No love story ever is, but in those early years, it felt unbreakable. It was the kind of love that makes people believe in second chances. And for a time, it was everything they had both been searching for. A reminder that even after fame, failure, and heartbreak, it's still possible to begin again. But even the strongest bonds can be tested. And in the years that followed, the very love that had healed them both would face the kind of trials that no spotlight could ever prepare them for. A love that saved and shattered by the time Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban married in 2006. The world saw a storybook romance. Two Australians who had conquered fame, found each other, and built a love that seemed unshakable. The ceremony in Sydney glowed with candlelight and sincerity, their faces lit with the kind of quiet joy that comes from finding peace after pain. But behind that glow, neither of them could have predicted how quickly love would be tested, and how deeply it would force them both to confront what it truly means to stay. Their first few months of marriage were blissful. They spent time between Nashville and Sydney, cooking, playing music, and finding comfort in the ordinary. Nicole often said she had never felt so grounded. Keith would come home from tour, barefoot and smiling, guitar in hand, while she sat cross-legged on the floor, listening as he played new songs inspired by her. Their connection was effortless, filled with the kind of everyday love that rarely makes headlines. The laughter in the kitchen, the quiet drives through Tennessee, the shared silence that felt safe. But fame has a way of intruding, even into the most private sanctuaries. As Keith's career continued to rise, the demands increased. Interviews, tours, appearances, long nights on the road. Behind his smile, he was fighting something few people knew about, a lingering battle with addiction, one that had shadowed him long before they met. For years, he had managed it quietly, relying on music and willpower to keep himself steady. But addiction isn't an enemy that retreats easily. Nicole saw the signs before the headlines did. The exhaustion, the distant looks, the subtle changes in his energy. She didn't react with anger or judgment. She responded with concern. She had lived enough life to recognize the difference between flaws and pain. Her instinct wasn't to leave, but to protect. When Keith's struggle deepened, Nicole became his shield. She canceled commitments, traveled with him, and made their home a place of refuge rather than chaos. To the public, they were still the perfect couple, smiling at award shows, walking hand in hand. But in private, she was holding the weight of two hearts, trying to keep him from sinking beneath the pressures of success and self-doubt. That same year, just 4 months after their wedding, headlines broke that would shatter the illusion of perfection. Keith Urban enters rehab. Fans were shocked. The fairy tale had cracked. But what the world saw as scandal, Nicole saw as salvation. It wasn't a fall from grace. It was a chance for healing. She didn't speak publicly, didn't issue statements, didn't play into speculation. Instead, she packed her bags and went to him. Her reason was simple and profound. Because love doesn't run. During his months in treatment, Nicole stood by his side, quietly supporting him through a process that demanded honesty, patience, and humility. While the world debated their future, she focused on his recovery. It wasn't easy. Addiction has a way of testing not just the person who suffers, but everyone who loves them. There were nights of doubt, days of silence, and moments when even hope felt fragile. But Nicole never wavered. In later interviews, Keith would credit her for saving his life, not by fixing him, but by believing in him. He said that her faith gave him something stronger than fear. That kind of devotion is rare in a world built on appearances, and it revealed the depth of their bond. For Nicole, the experience transformed her understanding of love. It wasn't the effortless kind found in romantic films. It was messy, demanding, and raw. It required patience when comfort vanished, forgiveness when pride intervened, and strength when both of them were vulnerable. She once shared that the hardest part of loving someone through darkness is learning that love alone can't heal everything, but it can make healing possible. When Keith completed treatment and returned home, their marriage emerged both fragile and fortified. He was sober, grateful, and renewed. Nicole was exhausted but peaceful, her heart tempered by resilience. Together, they rebuilt, slowly, deliberately, and privately. Keith poured his gratitude into music, writing songs like Thank You and Sweet Thing, both tributes to the woman who had stood by him when the world turned away. Each lyric carried the echo of recovery and redemption. Nicole, in turn, focused on family and faith, finding solace in small rituals, cooking, prayer, time with loved ones. Their love, once defined by chemistry and excitement, had evolved into something sturdier, partnership. They learned that commitment isn't tested by grand gestures, but by quiet consistency, by showing up when it would be easier to leave. Still, love after survival feels different. There's tenderness, but also caution. They had walked through fire together, and even when the flames died down, the memory lingered. For a while, everything seemed steady again. Two artists balancing fame with family, passion with peace. They welcomed their first daughter, Sunday Rose, in 2008, a living reminder of hope after hardship. In public, they appeared radiant, hand in hand at events, smiling with genuine affection. In private, they were more protective than ever of their world, aware that peace is fragile. The lessons of those early years stayed with them. Humility, gratitude, the understanding that love's truest form isn't about perfection, but perseverance. Nicole rarely spoke about those struggles in detail. Her silence wasn't secrecy, it was grace. She understood that some parts of love don't belong to the public, and that's what made their bond feel different. It wasn't defined by fame, it was defined by survival. What they built wasn't the fairy tale the tabloids once promised. It was something better, a real, imperfect love that had endured pain and come out stronger. But even the deepest love can be worn down by the passage of time and the demands of two extraordinary lives. Because when you've saved someone once, the question always lingers quietly in the background. Can love keep saving you forever? And soon, that question would become impossible for either of them to ignore. Quick pause. If you're finding Nicole's journey as powerful as we are, tap that like button. It helps more people discover real stories told with grace. The cost of perfection after Keith Urban returned from treatment. The glow of recovery surrounded them. The headlines called a comeback story, a triumph of love and willpower. For a while it truly was. Their marriage seemed stronger, their smiles brighter, their presence together unshakable. But underneath the polished surface, both of them were beginning to understand that healing doesn't end when the world stops watching. Sometimes, that's when it quietly begins again. Nicole Kidman had always been known for grace under pressure. She made it look easy, the way she could film a movie in Europe, attend an awards show in Los Angeles, and be home in Nashville by the weekend to tuck her daughters in a bed. But the truth behind that elegance was constant exhaustion. She wasn't just a global actress. She was a wife, a mother, and the emotional glue of a family still finding its balance. For Keith, recovery meant learning to live differently, with new boundaries, new habits, and constant self-awareness. For Nicole, it meant learning to let go of control. She wanted to protect him, to make sure nothing ever pulled him back into that darkness. But love like that can quickly turn into quiet anxiety, the fear that one wrong step could undo everything. Behind closed doors, she was learning what it means to love without trying to save. In public, they remained the picture of stability. They smiled at red carpets, exchanged playful glances during interviews, and spoke with gratitude about their journey. Yet, even in her laughter, there was a trace of fatigue, not from lack of love, but from the weight of expectation. Hollywood had placed them on a pedestal, the couple who beat the odds. Every appearance, every photo, carried the unspoken pressure to prove that image true. Nicole's schedule was relentless. She moved from one project to another, powerful, demanding roles that mirrored her inner life. In Rabbit Hole, she portrayed a mother navigating grief. In The Paperboy, a woman drawn to broken love. Audiences called her performances hauntingly real because in some way they were. Acting wasn't her escape, it was her language. It allowed her to express emotions she rarely showed off-screen. But that emotional honesty came at a price. Between film sets, long-distance flights, and motherhood, the balance grew thinner. She was always where she was needed, but rarely where she could rest. Keith, meanwhile, was constantly touring. His music career demanded energy, charisma, and presence, a sharp contrast to Nicole's need for calm. When she returned from filming, he was often already packing for another city. Their lives were still bound by love, but divided by rhythm. In interviews, Nicole once described herself as a deeply romantic realist. She believed in love, but she also understood its fragility. The fairy tale that had once rescued them was slowly becoming another performance they had to maintain, not for each other, but for everyone watching. Perfection had become their shadow, and while they never pretended to be flawless, the world around them did it for them. Behind that image, there were moments of silence, the kind that fills a home when two people are too tired to speak but too loyal to walk away. They still held hands, still said I love you, still supported each other's dreams. But there was a subtle distance forming, not born from anger, but from overextension. When both partners give everything to the world, there's often little left for each other. Yet through all of it, Nicole remained protective of their privacy. She refused to let tabloids turn their marriage into spectacle. When asked how she managed fame and family, she answered with characteristic simplicity, with love and a lot of faith. That faith wasn't blind optimism. It was a daily choice to believe that what they had built was worth protecting. Still, she knew that perfection was an illusion. The more people praised their strength, the more she wished she could just admit how human it all was, how hard it was to keep the balance between care and exhaustion, support and self-sacrifice. Even success began to feel like a trap. Every award, every headline, reinforced the expectation that she could hold it all together. But inside, she longed for stillness. Not applause, not admiration, just peace. By the late 2010s, their lives had become a cycle of arrivals and departures. Keith's concerts filled stadiums. Nicole's performances filled screens. But their quiet moments together grew shorter, more precious, more deliberate. They met between time zones, celebrated birthdays between tours, and wrote love notes between filming schedules. Their life was beautiful, but it was also a constant balancing act between passion and exhaustion. And perhaps that's what perfection truly costs. Not failure, but fatigue. The effort to keep everything looking effortless. The burden of being an example. The silent strain of living up to an image that was never meant to be real. For Nicole, the cracks in that image weren't a sign of failure. They were proof of authenticity. She began to speak more openly in interviews about imperfection, about embracing uncertainty. She called her family her anchor, but she also admitted that peace comes and goes like waves. Her honesty wasn't scandalous, it was refreshing. It reminded people that even icons get tired of pretending. Behind every flawless photo was a woman quietly rebuilding herself, again and again. The cost of perfection wasn't money or fame. It was the constant need to smile through the noise. And though she did it with grace, the silence between her and Keith was growing louder, one unspoken moment at a time. Because perfection might win applause, but it doesn't promise peace. And soon, Nicole would realize that peace, not perfection, was the one thing she could no longer live without. When the cameras turned away for a while, it looked like they had done the impossible. Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban seemed to have conquered the chaos of fame, recovery, and expectation. Interviews were lighthearted, their smiles were genuine, and photos of them holding hands on red carpets made fans believe that love could truly survive the weight of the spotlight. But as the years moved forward, something subtle began to shift. Something that no camera could capture and no headline could explain. Life between two global careers is a balancing act, and eventually, even the most loving rhythm starts to fall out of sync. Keith was constantly touring, moving from one city to the next, feeding off the energy of the crowd. Nicole, meanwhile, dove deeper into her work, taking on emotionally demanding roles that mirrored her own inner complexity. The physical distance was temporary, but the emotional distance was slowly, quietly becoming permanent. At first, they managed it beautifully. She'd visit him on tour, and he'd surprise her on set. They made promises to prioritize family dinners and quiet weekends. And for a while, it worked. Their two daughters became the center of their world. The reason they both tried to hold on to normalcy amid chaos. But love, even the strongest kind, needs presence. And presence was the one thing they were both running out of. When the cameras turned away, the silence grew louder. The conversations that once flowed effortlessly now felt rehearsed. Their texts became shorter, their calls more routine. They were still partners, still parents, still kind, but something was missing. That unspoken understanding that had once connected them was now hidden behind exhaustion and unhealed fatigue. The people closest to them began to notice. Friends described them as loving, but out of rhythm, like two musicians playing the same song in different tempos. They weren't arguing, they weren't drifting out of resentment. They were simply moving in opposite directions without realizing how far apart they'd already gone. Nicole had always been introspective. As the quiet deepened, she began to turn inward, journaling and meditating, trying to understand what was changing. Her roles became more reflective, women caught between loyalty and longing, like her performances in Lion and Big Little Lies. Those characters weren't just parts she played. They were echoes of questions she was asking herself. What does it mean to love someone deeply, but differently than before? How long do you hold on before you realize that holding on has become another form of letting go? Keith, on the other hand, found solace in his music. His lyrics began to sound softer, more vulnerable. Songs about longing, distance and memory filled his albums. It wasn't bitterness. It was reflection. He often said that music was how he told the truth he couldn't always say out loud. They both loved each other. That was never in doubt. But love doesn't always shield you from evolution. Sometimes it simply observes it happening. They were becoming two versions of themselves that the other didn't entirely recognize. Still familiar, still connected, but growing in ways that no longer overlapped. The public still saw the smiles, the shared glances, the polished perfection. But away from the spotlight, their conversations grew more about logistics than dreams. What once felt like partnership began to feel like coordination. Nicole had built a career on empathy. She could feel when something was slipping through her fingers, even when no one said it out loud. Yet, she didn't speak publicly about any of it. Her silence wasn't avoidance, it was respect. Both of them had weathered storms before and knew how quickly a whisper could turn into a headline. They protected their space fiercely, knowing that the world didn't need to witness every ache. Still, as months turned into years, that quiet gap became harder to ignore. Even their fans began to wonder, why were there fewer red carpet appearances together? Why did Keith attend certain awards shows alone? Nicole always had a reason. She was filming overseas, she was home with the kids, she was keeping life grounded. And all of that was true. But truth sometimes hides in what isn't said. Love, they had learned, can survive heartbreak, addiction, and fame. But what's harder to survive is gradual separation, the kind that doesn't arrive with arguments or ultimatums, but with slow, graceful silence. They didn't stop caring. They simply stopped reaching. The rhythm of their love song had changed, and neither knew how to bring it back. Still, neither of them spoke ill of the other. In every interview, Nicole spoke with admiration and tenderness. Keith, too, described her as an incredible woman. Their love didn't end with anger. It transitioned into gratitude. They had given each other stability, healing, and family. But life, as Nicole once said, doesn't always go in the direction you expect. The cameras had moved on, but their story wasn't finished. It was transforming. Behind the perfect images and poised smiles, there was acceptance. Two people realizing that sometimes love doesn't need to end in order to change shape. And that realization, though painful, was also peaceful. Because sometimes, what looks like silence isn't an ending at all. It's just a moment between two hearts learning a new kind of harmony, one that doesn't need to be seen to be real. And soon, that quiet understanding would set the stage for one of Nicole's most honest moments yet. The day she finally broke her silence, not with drama, but with grace. The quiet separation by the time whispers began circulating in the media, the real story had already been unfolding quietly for years. There was no explosive argument, no tabloid-worthy betrayal, no public breakdown. Just a gradual stillness, a slow drift that neither Nicole Kidman nor Keith Urban had planned, yet somehow both could feel. It was the kind of separation that doesn't begin with a door closing, but with hearts learning to beat at different rhythms. In September 2025, the world finally received confirmation. According to Reuters, the couple released a brief, measured joint statement that reflected exactly who they were: dignified, thoughtful, and private. There were no accusations, no hidden agendas, no sides to take. Just two people choosing peace over pretense. To the public, it felt like the end of an era. For nearly 2 decades, they had represented something rare in Hollywood, a love that seemed untouched by scandal or ego. Fans had watched them navigate addiction, recovery, fame, and family life with grace. They were the couple that made people believe stability was possible under the brightest lights. And now, they were proof that even the strongest love stories can evolve into something softer, quieter, and more personal. For Nicole, the announcement was both freeing and fragile. She had spent years living between two worlds, the performer who had to be perfect and the woman who simply wanted to breathe. The separation allowed her to exhale for the first time in years. But freedom, even the kind you choose, can ache. Behind her composure was a deep tenderness for the life she and Keith had built together, the memories, the laughter, the shared survival. Those close to her say she approached the separation with remarkable clarity. There were no sudden moves or harsh words. It wasn't about escaping, it was about evolving. She'd often said that love doesn't always end, it changes shape. And that was exactly how she viewed it. Their love hadn't disappeared. It had simply transformed into mutual respect and gratitude. Keith's response echoed that same sentiment. During a private acoustic event in Nashville, he told the audience, "Love doesn't die. It just takes a different form." It was the kind of honesty that resonated not just as a lyric, but as lived truth. They weren't rewriting their story. They were simply closing a chapter with dignity. Behind the scenes, they prioritized their daughters above everything else. Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret remained their shared foundation, and both parents made it clear that family would continue to be their common ground. Friends noted how, even after the split, they continued to communicate with care, planning schedules, birthdays, and holidays without tension. It wasn't about who won or lost. It was about ensuring their children felt loved, steady, and safe. In interviews that followed, Nicole's tone carried both acceptance and wisdom. She didn't dwell on what went wrong. She focused on what she had learned. In a conversation with E! Online, she reflected on how pain can shape growth, saying she had learned to accept change with gratitude. Her words weren't defensive, they were grounded. It wasn't about closure, it was about continuation. Fans were struck by how quietly she handled it all. There were no emotional outbursts, no viral interviews, no social media confessions. Just silence. Measured, intentional, powerful. That silence became her statement. In an age where every heartbreak becomes a headline, Nicole chose grace. And in doing so, she reminded people that dignity can be louder than drama. For Keith, the healing came through music. His songs started hitting different, less about wild romance, more about understanding and growth. Fans could totally feel the shift. The passionate anthems got swapped out for peaceful, soul-deep ballads. He wasn't writing songs to win love back anymore. He was writing to respect it, to honor what it meant. People close to both of them say there's no bad blood, no messy bitterness left hanging around. They still talk about each other with real warmth. Keith still calls Nicole an incredible woman, while Nicole describes him as a good man with a kind heart. Their story didn't fall apart. It simply changed shape. And in a world obsessed with chaos and ugly endings, that kind of evolution was honestly the quietest kind of bravery. For Nicole, the separation became less about heartbreak and more about rediscovering herself. She threw herself back into her craft, choosing roles that reflected her own path of resilience and renewal. Every performance started carrying more honesty, more calm, more truth. She wasn't acting to run away anymore. She was acting to express what she truly felt. Meanwhile, the world kept doing what it always does, speculating nonstop. But Nicole refused to feed into the noise. Her silence wasn't coldness, it was healing. And Keith respected that completely. They had shared too much life, too many deep moments, to let gossip blogs and headlines define them now. When Nicole was asked in an interview what she wished people understood about love, she answered simply, "It's not about forever, it's about truth." That line blew up everywhere, even though she never said it for attention. It perfectly captured her growth. A woman realizing that truth, not time, is what gives love its meaning. Their story wasn't some dramatic collapse. It was a transition. From passion to peace. From holding on to finally letting go. From constantly performing to simply existing as themselves. And while the media moved on to chase the next big headline, Nicole and Keith did what they'd always done best. They chose dignity over drama. Their fairy tale didn't shatter. It just learned how to breathe on its own. Because sometimes love doesn't have to last forever to be unforgettable. Sometimes the quiet ending is the realest part of the whole story. The world wanted answers, but she chose grace. When news of the separation finally hit, the world did exactly what it always does. It started hunting for somebody to blame. Social media went absolutely crazy with theories. Tabloids pumped out dramatic headlines every hour, and entertainment sites tried dissecting every tiny word, look, and public appearance. But through all that chaos, Nicole Kidman stayed silent. Not defensive, not hiding, just gracefully quiet. And honestly, that silence spoke louder than any interview ever could. In a culture addicted to public fights and messy drama, her restraint felt almost rebellious. Reporters kept asking for statements. Fans spammed her posts with questions, and gossip pages created their own versions of the truth. But Nicole never took the bait. She didn't deny anything, didn't confirm anything. She just kept moving forward with quiet class. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. It was the decision of a woman who'd lived enough life to understand that peace doesn't always need explaining. While everybody else chased drama, she chose calm. In an interview with People, she reflected on how unpredictable life can be, saying, "You think you know where your life is going, and then it surprises you." At the time, those words seemed simple. But after the separation became public, they hit differently, like soft foreshadowing. Not staged, not dramatic, just painfully honest. In another calm moment during an interview with People, she opened up about handling public curiosity. "I've learned to let people say what they'll say. What matters is how I live, not what they assume." That one line basically summed up her entire mindset, refusing to beg for validation in a world obsessed with judging people. Still, the rumors wouldn't stop. Some people claimed she was crushed. Others acted like she felt free for the first time in years. But the truth, like always, was somewhere in the middle. She was human, hurting, healing, and hopeful all at once. But she refused to let the public turn those emotions into entertainment. Instead, she poured them into her work. On set, her performances became deeper. In interviews, her words carried a different kind of strength, less polished, more genuine. The woman who once hid her feelings behind perfect smiles now carried them with quiet honesty. Friends later shared that after the separation, Nicole spent more time at home in Nashville, focusing on her daughters and trying to find balance again. Her mornings became simple, gardening, getting her hands in the dirt, shutting out the noise of the world for a little while. And somehow, through those small routines, she slowly found peace again. "It's the simple things," she once said while talking about happiness. "Silence, laughter, a cup of tea. That's where I find myself again." And while the tabloids kept chasing scandal after scandal, something unexpected happened. People actually started respecting her silence. The lack of drama became the story itself. Folks realized not every ending needs screaming matches or public breakdowns. Some endings happen with understanding. Her refusal to trade grace for gossip transformed the separation from a spectacle into a statement. Meanwhile, Keith handled everything in almost the exact same way. No bitterness, no blaming, no cheap shots. During a radio interview, when somebody asked about Nicole, he smiled softly and simply said, "She's an amazing woman. Always will be." That was it. No hidden meaning, no drama, just respect. And honestly, their calmness revealed something most people completely missed. This wasn't a war, it was a release. Nicole's career didn't slow down after the separation. If anything, it entered a brand new chapter of authenticity. She started choosing characters who mirrored her emotional rebirth. Women who'd lost something important but came out stronger, wiser, calmer, freer. Every role felt connected to where she was emotionally grounded, reflective, and no longer afraid of truth. She also became more open about protecting her emotional boundaries. In one interview, she said, "You can't control what the world believes, but you can control what you give it." Fans connected deeply with that line. In an era where oversharing had basically become survival for celebrities, Nicole proved that silence could still be powerful. There is something deeply poetic about the way she handled everything. The same woman who once stood beside her husband during his darkest moments was now standing beside herself, with compassion instead of pity. She wasn't angry, she wasn't bitter, and she definitely wasn't broken. She was simply moving forward, quietly, carefully, and on her own terms. Her silence became more than self-protection. It became a message to women everywhere. You do not owe the world an explanation for your peace. You don't need to justify your choices to people who've never lived your life. Nicole's calm defiance reminded millions that sometimes the loudest power move is saying absolutely nothing. Even when paparazzi followed her around, desperate for an emotional reaction, she stayed composed. Sunglasses on, head high, no comment. The woman who'd spent decades living under non-stop public scrutiny had mastered the art of becoming invisible in plain sight. And it wasn't about hiding. It was about taking her power back. As the weeks passed, public opinion slowly shifted. The headlines stopped focusing on rumors and started admiring her composure instead. Words like classy, graceful, and inspirational started appearing everywhere. People finally began seeing what Nicole had known all along. Real strength doesn't need to scream for attention. Nicole Kidman had spent decades playing women searching for freedom, love, and self-understanding. But now, in real life, she was living that same journey herself. Not on a movie set, not inside a script, but through the quiet choices she made every single day. Because in a world demanding answers, she chose grace. And that choice, more than any role she ever played, revealed who she truly was. Not a woman defined by loss, but a woman defined by dignity. And later, when she finally decided to speak publicly, not through gossip, but through reflection, what she revealed wasn't anger. It wasn't regret. It was something way more powerful. Peace. Quick reminder, don't miss what comes next. Subscribe now, so you never miss the moments that reveal the real heart behind the headlines. The interview that changed everything. When Nicole Kidman finally spoke publicly after the separation, she didn't drop some explosive statement, and she definitely didn't do a dramatic tell-all interview. Instead, she allowed her truth to unfold naturally through a series of thoughtful conversations. Every interview felt less like a big announcement and more like a reflection on growth, on what it really means to outgrow pain without becoming bitter. Her first words came not in a press release, but through a quiet moment online. According to Hello, Nicole shared a simple post about spending time with her family. There were no references to the past, no hidden subtext, just gratitude. Fans immediately flooded her comment section with messages of love and encouragement, turning her understated update into a global moment of empathy. That quiet post became her soft re-entry into public life. It wasn't dramatic or strategic. It was human. She wasn't trying to control the narrative. She was simply choosing connection over chaos. Then came the interviews. In her conversation with E! Online, Nicole didn't mention Keith's name directly. She didn't need to. Her words carried all the quiet honesty of someone who had made peace with her past. You don't always get to choose what stays or what leaves, she said softly, but you do get to choose how you carry it. That single line traveled across social media, not as gossip, but as wisdom. Viewers heard a woman who had learned to transform loss into reflection. Later, in a sit-down with People, she went deeper. She spoke about how devastating moments can teach you gratitude, adding that healing isn't a finish line, but a process, one that demands patience and forgiveness, mostly toward oneself. There was no drama in her tone, no trace of regret, only understanding. It was the first time the public saw Nicole not as a star navigating heartbreak, but as a human being navigating life. For years, silence had been her protection. Now, it had become her teacher. The woman who once guarded her emotions behind poise and polish was finally allowing vulnerability to step forward. Not for sympathy, but for truth. It was as if she had found a new rhythm in her own story. Quieter, more deliberate, more real. In one of her most reflective moments, Nicole shared, "I used to think resilience was about pushing through. Now I think it's about sitting still and letting things pass." That perspective resonated deeply with her audience, especially women who had followed her journey from the early days of her career. She wasn't offering advice. She was offering perspective, the kind that comes only from living, hurting, and healing in public. The beauty of her words was how little they revealed and how much they meant. She never spoke about what went wrong. She spoke about what grew right. She never talked about endings. she talked about beginnings. To her, this wasn't the aftermath of a breakup. It was the evolution of a woman learning to exist on her own terms. Her fans, long accustomed to the perfection of her public image, were surprised by how relatable she sounded. There was no script, no rehearsed soundbite, just authenticity. She wasn't trying to inspire anyone, yet she did. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can share is not the details of your pain, but the strength that followed it. Behind the camera, those close to Nicole said that she seemed lighter, more present. She laughed more easily, spent longer hours at home, and returned to work with a kind of calm that her colleagues hadn't seen before. Her voice, once cautious, now carried the quiet confidence of someone who had finally accepted that peace doesn't require explanation. Critics noticed the change too. In her next film roles, she radiated emotional depth that went beyond acting. It wasn't technique, it was truth. The stillness in her performances felt lived in, as if the line between character and self had softened. She had always been brilliant, but now there was something new behind her eyes, grace born of experience. Each interview she gave felt like another chapter in a long letter to her younger self. To the woman who once feared heartbreak, to the actress who once mistook applause for affection, to the wife who once thought love meant endurance. Now she knew love could also mean release. And perhaps that's why her words resonated so strongly. They weren't about loss, they were about liberation. The Nicole Kidman the world saw now wasn't defined by who she had loved, but by how she had learned. Her honesty became a quiet revolution in a culture obsessed with spectacle. She didn't give the media what it wanted, a confession. She gave them what they didn't expect, a reflection. She turned her pain into perspective, her silence into strength. By the time the interviews ended, something had shifted permanently. Nicole's story was no longer about separation. It was about self-discovery. She wasn't asking for sympathy or seeking headlines. She was simply reminding the world that growth doesn't always happen in noise. It often happens in stillness. Because when Nicole finally spoke, she didn't break her silence to explain the past. She broke it to honor the present, to remind herself and everyone listening that sometimes the most graceful kind of power is the ability to speak softly and still be heard. And the world, for once, listened. The strength and stillness after her reflective interviews, it became clear that Nicole Kidman was entering a new era, one not defined by fame, romance, or reinvention, but by stillness. She had lived her life under constant motion, the rush of red carpets, the intensity of film sets, the rhythm of family and fame colliding. Now, for the first time, she was allowing herself to slow down and simply exist. That stillness wasn't absence, it was healing. In the months following her separation, Nicole stepped away from public appearances and focused on grounding herself in simplicity. She spent long mornings in her Nashville garden, tending to flowers barefoot in the soil. For someone who had once lived surrounded by cameras, the quiet was almost sacred. A close friend told Hello magazine, "Nicole isn't chasing anything right now. She's just learning to be." She found strength in ordinary rituals, the sound of her daughter's laughter, the comfort of a book read in silence, the act of making tea without rushing anywhere. In those small moments, she rediscovered the person behind the actress, the woman behind the legend. She had spent decades portraying characters learning to heal. Now, she was finally living that truth herself. For years, Nicole's life had been measured by milestones. Oscars, premieres, chart-topping collaborations, magazine covers. But this new chapter wasn't about achievement. It was about acceptance. The acceptance that peace doesn't always come wrapped in applause, and that love can evolve into gratitude even when it changes form. Her reflections during this time were not melancholy. They were grounded in wisdom. In a conversation with People, she said, "Pain doesn't stay forever. It reshapes you. It passes, and what's left is softer, but stronger." That idea of softness as strength became the essence of her transformation. She wasn't running for vulnerability anymore. She was embracing it. Her energy on screen began to shift as well. Her next roles carried a quiet power, the kind that comes from someone who no longer needs to prove anything. Audiences noticed the difference. Her performances in this period felt stripped of artifice, calm, measured, deeply human. There was a serenity to her presence that spoke louder than any dialogue. Those who worked with her during this time said she brought an almost meditative focus to set. She was gentle but firm, quiet but fully present. She didn't rush scenes, didn't force emotions. Instead, she let them breathe, the same way she was learning to let her own emotions breathe in life. She's more peaceful than I've ever seen her, one longtime collaborator told E! Online. It's like she found her rhythm again, but slower, truer. The media, always hungry for spectacle, began to pivot. Instead of chasing rumors, they started celebrating her composure. Articles shifted from speculation to admiration, describing her as Hollywood's calm in the storm. It was a rare transformation, one that turned her silence into a source of inspiration rather than curiosity. In that stillness, Nicole also began to redefine success. She no longer viewed it as fame or recognition, but as peace of mind, the ability to sit alone, without noise, and feel content. She once said in an interview years prior, "When I was younger, silence made me anxious. Now it feels like a gift." That quote resurfaced online as fans recognized how full circle her journey had become. Her daughters, growing up in a world obsessed with speed, saw in their mother a different lesson. That strength isn't always loud or visible. It's sometimes found in restraint, in patience, in the quiet confidence of knowing who you are when no one's watching. Nicole often credited motherhood as the anchor that kept her grounded through every transition. "They remind me what matters," she said. "They bring me back to earth every time." Stillness didn't mean isolation. It meant clarity. Nicole began spending more time with close friends, taking unpublicized trips to visit family in Australia, reconnecting with nature, and surrounding herself with people who valued peace over publicity. It was a quieter circle, but a truer one. And in that calm, something beautiful happened. The pain began to lose its sharpness. The sadness that once lingered turned into reflection. The longing turned into appreciation. She could look back at her years with Keith, not as something lost, but as something lived. Their story had been full, meaningful, and human, and that was enough. When asked by Harper's Bazaar about how she saw the next phase of her life, Nicole smiled and said, "I'm not chasing a new chapter. I'm just living this one." It was a sentence that encapsulated everything she had learned. Stillness wasn't a pause before the next act. It was the act. For someone who had spent decades constantly moving, this period of calm wasn't a retreat. It was a realization. She no longer needed to be the symbol of perfection, the icon of elegance, or the embodiment of resilience. She could just be Nicole, a woman who had faced storms, learned from them, and found peace not in running faster, but in standing still. Because sometimes strength doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers. And in her stillness, Nicole Kidman was finally learning to listen to the quiet, to her heart, and to the life that was waiting for her beyond the noise. And soon, that stillness would give birth to something even more profound, a quiet understanding of what love truly means when it no longer needs to be proven. What she really meant by silence. For years, Nicole Kidman's silence had been a mystery. Fans, journalists, and even her colleagues often wondered why she chose not to speak when others might have filled the air with explanations. But as time went on, it became clear that her silence wasn't an absence of voice. It was a language of its own. Every pause, every gentle smile, every moment of calm carried meaning. It wasn't retreat. It was revelation. In her interviews after the separation, Nicole began to articulate what silence had taught her. She explained that silence, for her, wasn't about ignoring the past or hiding from pain. It was about giving herself the space to understand it. Sometimes, she said softly in one interview, you need quiet to hear what your heart has been trying to say all along. Those words resonated deeply with people who had followed her journey. not just through love and heartbreak, but through the unrelenting noise of celebrity life. For decades, she had lived in a world where every whisper became a headline. Silence was her rebellion. It was her way of reclaiming control over her own narrative. When she spoke of that silence, she did so with tenderness, not defense. People think silence is avoidance, she once reflected. But sometimes it's peace. It's choosing not to turn pain into performance. That line alone encapsulated everything she had come to believe about love, fame, and healing. Her fans saw in her a mirror, a woman who had lived through change with grace, who had loved deeply, lost quietly, and re-emerged without bitterness. Her silence wasn't emptiness. It was the sound of boundaries, of growth, of wisdom earned the hard way. Over the years, Nicole had mastered the art of reflection. She had been through the kind of experiences that could have hardened her: public divorces, scrutiny, the constant demands of success. Yet, rather than become guarded, she had become gentle. That was what made her silence so powerful. It wasn't offensive, it was open. She wasn't closing doors, she was letting light filter through them slowly, on her own terms. In a quiet moment with Harper's Bazaar, she described her understanding of peace. It's not something you arrive at. It's something you practice. For her, silence was that practice. A daily decision to live deliberately, to listen more than she spoke, to move through the world with empathy rather than anger. Keith Urban once said that Nicole had a way of making calm feel like strength. And he was right. Even as their lives diverged, that calm became her defining presence. It wasn't indifference, it was acceptance. She had learned that letting go doesn't always mean saying goodbye. Sometimes it just means saying thank you. There's a quiet beauty in that kind of maturity, the understanding that love doesn't vanish. It transforms. It turns from passion into peace, from need into gratitude, from words into stillness. That's what her silence meant. It wasn't about hiding from the world. It was about embracing it from a place of serenity. And perhaps that's why, when Nicole finally did choose to speak, she didn't recount events or offer explanations. She spoke about growth, self-understanding, and the value of time. She said that silence had allowed her to reconnect with herself. Not the actress, not the icon, but the woman. The one who still believed in love, but not in the same way as before. Her silence also became a message to others, especially women who had felt unseen, unheard, or misunderstood. She showed that you don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need to prove your peace to anyone. You can be both private and profound. You can protect your heart without hiding it. For Nicole, silence became the truest reflection of her character. It was the bridge between who she had been and who she was becoming. It was the echo of her strength, resonating long after the noise faded. And it was in that quiet that she discovered her clearest truth, that happiness doesn't live in applause or in explanation, but in presence. When she was asked what advice she'd give her younger self, Nicole smiled and said, "I'd tell her not to rush to fill every silence. Sometimes, silence is where you finally hear the truth." It was a simple answer, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. Her silence was never about distance. It was about grace. It was about knowing that love, once spoken too loudly, loses its purity. That pain, when turned into performance, loses its purpose. And sometimes, the realest strength ain't in what you say. It's in what you decide to keep unsaid. Because silence, when it comes from understanding, ain't empty, it's growth. It's peace finally showing up where chaos used to live. And for Nicole Kidman, that peace wasn't the end of her story. Nah, it was just the start of living life on her own terms, quiet, brave, and beautiful. And like she once said with that calm little smile, you don't always gotta explain peace. Sometimes you just live it. Final message, the voice of grace. There comes a point in every journey where words just don't hit the same anymore, where the lessons, the feelings, and the growth start speaking for themselves. For Nicole Kidman, that moment came softly, no drama, no big scene. After months of deep reflection and quiet honesty, she didn't just find her voice again. She found peace within herself. Her story was never really about loss or endings. It was about growth. The whole world watched her walk through fire more than once. Heartbreak, fame, healing, reinvention. But this time, something felt different. She wasn't out here trying to prove how strong she was or fighting to fix her image. She was just living, fully at peace with herself, her past, and the love that shaped her journey. In a world addicted to noise and non-stop chaos, Nicole's calm energy became something powerful. While everybody else kept searching for answers, she offered understanding instead. And when people pushed her to tell her side of the story, she just smiled and said, "There isn't just one side. There's the story we lived and the grace we leave behind." Those words were quiet, but man, they hit deep. They reflected everything she had become. Truth is, Nicole Kidman never needed to break her silence to leave an impact. Her silence was the statement. It carried more weight than any dramatic confession ever could. It wasn't about hiding the truth. It was about protecting something real and pure. In her stillness, she reminded people that not every story got to be picked apart to be understood. She once said, "When love ends, it doesn't have to become bitterness. It can become gratitude." And honestly, that became her legacy, gratitude. Gratitude for the years she shared, the lessons she learned, and the peace she finally found. That gratitude glowed from her naturally, not loud or flashy, just warm, steady, and genuine. In interviews, whenever she spoke about Keith Urban, her words carried respect. She talked about their history with softness, not regret. Not like somebody stuck mourning the past, but like someone thankful for what once existed. That kind of emotional maturity, very few people ever reach that level. It's the type of growth that turns heartbreak into wisdom. Nicole's voice, once careful and guarded, now carried freedom. She didn't need to hide behind perfection anymore. Her honesty became her elegance. And moving forward, she wasn't defined by who she used to be with. She was defined by who she had become. A woman untouched by noise, unfazed by rumors, and never afraid of silence. Fans started seeing her differently too, not just as an actress or Hollywood icon, but as a symbol of resilience without bitterness. She became proof that grace doesn't mean weakness. It means choosing peace over ego, understanding over anger, and reflection over reaction. And in a culture obsessed with drama, that choice made her timeless. There's a quote people often connected to her during that time. "If love can evolve, maybe silence isn't the end. It's just a softer beginning." Whether she actually said it or not, it fits her story perfectly. Her silence wasn't the closing of a chapter. It was the soft turning of a new page. When she appeared at her next public event, calm, confident, glowing, people didn't see a woman destroyed by change. They saw a woman reborn through it. The applause filling that room wasn't just for her talent. It was for her humanity. Because even in her quietest moments, Nicole Kidman taught the world something real. Dignity shines brighter than drama, and peace speaks louder than pain ever will. As the world keeps moving faster and louder every single day, her story stands as a reminder that healing doesn't always happen in public. Sometimes it happens quietly, in tiny moments of truth and laughter shared with your kids. In that first morning when you wake up and realize the pain slowly turned into gratitude. Nicole's journey was never about perfect endings. It was about honest new beginnings. She didn't rewrite her story to make people happy. She just kept living it, one peaceful breath at a time. And honestly, that's what makes her story unforgettable. Not the fame, not the headlines, but the courage to choose grace when the whole world expected chaos. So as the rain falls once again outside her Nashville home, the same soft rhythm that started this whole story, Nicole sits quietly, finally comfortable in the stillness she once feared. The script beside her still hasn't been touched, but now she understands something important. She doesn't need to perform to tell her story, because her truth, spoken softly, is already enough. And if you believe real strength lives in kindness and grace, stick around, because stories like these remind us that silence can be powerful too. Subscribe for more real, Human stories behind Hollywood's brightest hearts.